Welcome to the Let's Talk Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Robert Smith, along with my co-host, Adam Carver-Stelman. And today, we'll be discussing our top 10 cornerback prospects for the 2023 NFL Draft. Adam, let's talk Seahawks.
Let's talk cornerbacks. Look, this is another one of those positions that is insanely deep. We've said it a million times, or at least I have, during these breakdowns of our rankings, where this may not be the heaviest loaded draft class for these top tier elite guys, but my gosh, almost every single one of these positions is just incredibly deep. You're going to be able to find contributors all the way through. And cornerback is no exception. We're going to do a top 10, but we could easily do a top 30. And I think we would have plenty of guys to talk about because there are going to be guys just like last year that are going to be found in these later round drafts on day 2, day 3, that are going to be able to come in and contribute right away.
Oh, for sure. And of course, I love defensive backs in general. That's what I played when I was playing. That's what I coaching is defensive backs. I like analyzing defensive backs. I mean, breaking down technique, fundamentals, what these guys do. I was a press man coach. That's what I love to coach. That was my favorite thing to run. And so I like press corners. You're going to see that a little heavy on my list, and that's why. But man, I'm going to have a hard time keeping this in a watchable time frame. So Adam might have to cut me off and speed this up a little bit because I really enjoy reviewing these type of players.
Oh man, I hope you're not relying on me for that. I am not the best guy to be limiting the talking points here, but let's see what we can do.
All right, so let's get this underway. Our top 10 list consists of 5 players that we rank as our true number 1 to number 5. Then we're going to spotlight 3 players that we have in our mid-round tiers, kind of guys we think are going to go in that 3rd, 4th, 5th range. And then a couple guys as our late round guys. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to call myself out now. I'm pretty sure I have my top 5 and then 5 mid-round guys. But honestly, I couldn't pare it down. There were so many guys I wanted to talk about. I wanted to make sure they got on this list. So without further ado, here is our number 10s, which are the start of our late round guys. I have Mekhi Blackmon from USC, and Adam has Jordan Perryman out of Washington. So Mekhi Blackmon, he's got a slight frame, right? 175 pounds. There's a little question there. Is he going to be able to stand up against those big X receivers that we have in the NFL? He's got shorter arms, 31 inches. This is why I dropped him down my list and put him in that late round category. I think there's a chance he could fall a round or two just because of these measurables. Definitely not a Seahawky type corner because he's 5'11", 175 with 31-inch arms. But he's a man coverage corner. He has really good agility, foot quickness. He can cover slot receivers. He was asked to cover tight ends, and even at 5'11", 175, he was pretty successful at covering tight ends that were split out wide. He's not going to come in and crowd somebody off the line of scrimmage, but if they line up in the slot, he can take a tight end out of the slot. He lacks a little bit of the physicality and run defense, which is contributed to that lack of size. But man, this guy is a baller. He will get out there. He'll do anything you ask him to do, even if he might be undersized for it. He kind of gets that gamer tag for me. So that's why I've got Mekhi Blackmon as my number 10.
Yeah, look, if we, like I said earlier, we were doing a list of all of our favorite defensive backs in this draft, we would have a really long list. And this is a perfect example because I love Mekhi Blackmon. I think you're right. Not a prototypical Seahawks corner, but if you look, we took Trey Brown, also not a prototypical Seahawks corner. We had great success with DJ a couple of years ago. So I think the Seahawks may have expanded or broadened their horizons a little bit on these defensive backs, and it's a possibility that you might see them take a chance on a guy like this. And knowing the USC connection with Pete Carroll, there's a possibility that he's scouted this guy as much as you and I have. And yeah, you're right. Smaller guy, slight frame, but that doesn't affect his play on the field. This guy plays with the tenacity of a much, much bigger cornerback. He is not afraid to line up across bigger guys and play press coverage, and he's really, really good at it. Probably one of the better press coverage corners in this draft, and it's all about technique. This guy knows how to set his feet, get his hands in the right position to bump those receivers before they can make their breaks. I love Mekhi Blackmon. Great pick.
Yeah, and then your guy here, number 10, Jordan Perryman.
All right. Before you start the bashing, before you start the bashing, spoiler alert, Jordan Perryman is not going to be drafted this year. Like you said, I think, and look, from this point on, all of the guys that I have on my list are going to get drafted. I don't know if any of them are going to make it past the 5th or 6th round, because like you said, it's really hard to pare our favorite defensive backs down. I had to get a Washington guy in there, and I think and Jordan Perryman is the only Washington defensive back that I've got with a draftable grade this year. I don't think he's going to get drafted. Like I said, this is more of like an undrafted free agent. I do think there's a really good shot that the Seahawks are going to give this guy an invite into camp because physically, this is a Seahawks cornerback. Tall, lanky, good weight, good hands, loves playing press coverage, loves getting involved in the run game, and loves tackling. He's not the best at any of these things. He's actually really not really good at almost any of them. But I think that's more about coaching. Look, this is a transfer. He's only been in Washington for 1 year, and I think he transferred there because he wanted to go to a place that was going to accentuate his physical skills because he has some pretty decent physical skills. But he just didn't acquit himself really well. I think this is a guy that needs time to develop. He's obviously a practice squad stash if he does make a roster. But I had to highlight a UW guy, and so that's why Jordan Perryman makes my list.
All right. I'm glad you gave all those disclaimers. Listen, he has adequate on-field athleticism, right? And you see that on tape. He can stay with guys who don't have a good athletic profile, but he's not catching anybody from behind. I mean, he ran a 4.54 40, which isn't the best for a corner, especially the way that the NFL is trending now. So like I said, he's not running anybody down. He has pretty good route recognition, but he has trouble in man coverage. So if he was going to go to a system, it needs to be a system that's a zone heavy scheme, or he needs to just accept a safety conversion and start playing from that deep center field, traditional free safety position. He's clearly an undrafted free agent on my board, and he's probably like the 50th corner in this class.
Probably, I would say he's probably lower than that, to be honest. But I had to talk about a UW guy, so there you go.
All right. Coming in at number 9, I have Tre'Vius Hodges Tomlinson out of TCU, and you have Cameron Mitchell out of Northwestern. I really like Hodges Tomlinson here. I just couldn't find a way to put him on my list. And so he's really a mid-round guy who's slated down a little bit. And I can justify this by saying he's undersized, right? He's 5'8", 175 pounds. He's really athletic, but I think the size might scare some teams away. And that might drop him around maybe 2 rounds from where he deserves to be drafted because he has really good skills. He's a very good man coverage technique player, right? He has good ball skills. He can disrupt and make plays on the pass. Like, he's going to get pass breakups for you despite the fact that he's 5'8". And I really appreciate that, especially as a vertically challenged individual myself. I like to see the shorter guys do well, and he definitely balls out and plays well. Due to that size, he can be a liability in the run game, right? He struggles to fight off blocks, and it's not due to lack of effort. This guy is a high effort, high motor. I mean, he's going to give you everything he has, but what he has is not an extra 25 pounds to fight off that blocker in the run game. So you'll see teams run like jet sweeps at him because they know that a receiver can block him. And these are things that might have to be schemed around, or he has to play in a position where this doesn't hurt the team that he's drafted by. And that's why I think he might get pushed a round or 2 later than he deserves to be drafted.
Yeah, I'm on board with you 100%. This is another one of those guys that I really wish I could have had on my list. I don't because I've got other guys I really want to talk about, but I'm so glad he's on yours. Yeah, this is not a guy who plays to his size. He plays much bigger than he is. He is another one of those guys that just absolutely loves to be on the field, throws his body around. He's happy to be on on every single play. But yeah, obviously undersized. 5'8" is not a very big dude in the NFL, especially playing a defensive position. There's not a lot of guys that can acquit themselves really well at 5'8" on that side of the ball. Most of the time, when you see a guy come into the NFL that's under, 5'10", he's on the offensive side, whether he's a wide receiver or a running back. So you've got to be able to play really, really well and have solid technique to go this far at this position at this size. Yeah, you're right. He's going to drop down a little bit in the draft. This is another one of those guys that I think if teams are looking, like, look, we haven't taken a corner, or we still have a need at corner, possibly slot corner. We need a guy. He's going to make an NFL roster somewhere, and someone's going to look like a genius for drafting him where they draft him. So yeah, he's a value pick. Someone's going to take a chance on him in day 3. Why not the Seahawks?
Because they won't draft a corner that's 5'8". I'm sorry.
Yes, you're right.
I really like him, but I'm sorry he's not going to be a Seahawk.
Yeah, you're probably
your guy, on the other hand, is intriguing. Cameron Mitchell out of Northwestern.
Yeah, look. This is a guy who, if the Seahawks are looking for that, late in the draft steal, I think Cameron Mitchell's definitely going to be one of those guys. He's not being talked about, obviously coming out of Northwestern, not a really big school, but there are the reason he caught my eye was because we have other guys from that school that are making some noise in this draft. Adebaware being the guy that I'm really talking about here out of Northwestern. But this is a guy who has all the physical tools you'd want out of a corner. He's not elite in any real physical category. I mean, he's under 6 foot, has slightly shorter arms. They're under 32 inches, which, is usually the cutoff for the Seahawks. But he's a pretty physical guy. I mean, even at 5'11", this guy's almost 200 pounds. He can be a bruiser, and you see it on his tackling. This guy is a sure tackler. He loves hitting hard, loves coming up and being involved in that run game. Good at playing press coverage, even with those shorter arms, because he's really physical at the point of attack and on that line. Yeah, this guy's going to be a late day, a day 3 steal for some team.
Oh yeah, he's definitely an intriguing prospect. You said he doesn't have any elite physical traits. I kind of beg to differ, right? He's not the prototypical size. He doesn't have really long arms. His 40 time didn't blow anybody away. It was middle of the pack. It was a 4.47 40 official time. But his 10-yard split was a 1.48, which was in the 93rd percentile.
All right.
So
all right.
He has an explosive get off, which, if harnessed properly, can be used to excel.
Yeah.
Solid instincts when he goes up, when the catch point's approaching. He has 13 pass breakups. He is limited in turnovers, though. He's only generated 2 career interceptions while in college, and he definitely has too many penalties in coverage. He gets a little grabby.
He especially when and that 40 time might be the reason. If guys get past him from that press coverage, he does have a tendency to hold. That's something we're gonna have to, or it's gonna have to be coached out of him. But he's got the tenacity. I mean, that's how he plays his game. I'm not gonna fault him for that. Although I'm sure some coaches will be yelling at him when they get to those penalty flags.
Well, they hurt a lot more in the NFL than they do in college.
Yeah, they do.
So, but he, like I said, he has good instincts, and that's something that a team will definitely take a chance on. I agree with you. 6th round is probably perfect for this guy. All right, coming in at number 8. This is the first of our mid-round guys. I have Riley Moss out of Iowa, and you have Caillou Blue Kelly out of Stanford. So Riley Moss, I had seen on tape because I had reviewed other Iowa prospects. And this guy kind of caught my eye, but not enough to do a deep dive on him. And then I watched the combine. And he was a combine riser. Like, he was one of the guys I just couldn't stop watching because he was smooth in all the field work. He was athletic. He tested really well. He was hanging with all the top prospects. He's a former track athlete, which, explains a lot of the athleticism. 4.45 official time in the 40, 127-inch broad jump, 39-inch in the vert. So explosive. He has that athleticism. He was the 2021, so last year, Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. He also earned Iowa's Team Hustle Award, right? So all of that equals competitive streak and high effort, high motor. He also has a really high football IQ. So this is somebody who will contribute positively regardless of if he's a starter or not. He was a high school wide receiver. You can see that in his ball skills. I believe he had 11 interceptions in college. He's a little too conservative in coverage. I think if he got a little more aggressive, that number would have gone up. And I think that's something that these NFL coaches can definitely bring out of him.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, you watch this guy play in the field. He's definitely one of those guys that plays the head games. I mean, he's a very intellectual football player, which is kind of funny because you go back and look at all these other guys we talked about from Iowa, and they're all these physical freaks. And he's not a slouch in the physical category. I mean, this guy does everything pretty well. Again, you said he was a track star in high school, but yeah. I actually should say that he's still kind of a physical freak. I mean, I think he had a 42-inch vertical. That's pretty big.
Yeah, I've got 39 from the combine, but
okay. Oh, sorry, his pro day was 42 inches, I guess. So he added a few on his pro day. But he made Bruce Feldman's physical freak list for this year, which there spoiler alert is pretty full of Iowa players. And he's just one of them. But yeah, look, there's that old adage that white men can't jump, and Riley Moss proves people wrong in that category.
Yes, he did. All right, so Caillou Blue Kelly out of Stanford is an intriguing pick you have here at number 8. Why do you think he's going to go mid-round, and why is he number 8 on your list?
Yeah, so when I submit, I think there's a chance this guy sneaks into day 2. I could see someone taking a chance on him in late in the 3rd round. And it's because this is another one of those. I mean, he's just a really well-rounded player. This guy does everything pretty well. He's also got all the physical attributes you'd want out of your defensive back. I mean, he's 6 feet tall, weighs over 190 pounds, pretty solidly built guy. He's very cut. If you look at him, I mean, this guy, he doesn't have a lot of fat on him. 32-inch arm, so he kind of hits all those measurables that you would be looking for if you were, drafting the Seahawks type corner. Doesn't have a ton of elite measurables, but pretty great broad jump. 130-inch broad jump. So this guy is explosive for sure. And he's just fun to watch. I mean, this guy flies all the field. This is definitely one of those guys that plays a lot faster than he looks running the 40 in his shorts. Stanford is one of those schools that I don't think is necessarily known for their defensive players, and he was a standout for the Cardinals. I mean, just in on every play. I mean, not a great guy when it comes to pass breakups or coverage downfield, but he is a very physical guy in the run game. He's going to have to be coached up a little bit, I think, in his coverage skills, but he could come in and be a special teams ace right away.
Yeah, he's a 4-year starter, right? Lots of experience in a good conference under his belt. When you say coached up on his coverage skills, I'm going to take that one step farther and say he needs to be coached up on his zone coverage skills, because he is a very good press man specialist. Right?
Oh, yeah.
He has a really strong, you always hear about jamming the receiver, right? He has a great punch. And so he can hit a receiver to the fact that he's rerouting guys at the line of scrimmage, which is what that jam is supposed to do, right? He's going to fit in really well if he goes to a man-heavy defensive scheme. That would be the best thing for him. He's definitely going to contribute on special teams, but he can come in and be a factor on the field on defense if he goes to a man-heavy system. All right, coming in at number 7, we have Julius Brents, who's commonly mocked to the Seahawks from Kansas State.
Why?
And Adam has Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Listen, this guy, Julius Brents out of Kansas State, as soon as his official measurements came in, everybody's like, oh, Pete Carroll salivating over this guy. He's going to be the next Seahawks corner. And of course, they're going to say that. Listen, he has a Seahawks size profile, like everything they want. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, has 34-inch arms. I mean, this guy's disruption area is awesome. He's a twitchy, explosive athlete, 41.5-inch vert, 138-inch broad jump. That's 11 feet 6 inches if you're out there doing math in your head. He doesn't really have that sixth gear, and that's one reason he's not the next Tariq Woolen, is because he doesn't have that catch-up speed. So he ran an official 4.53 in the 40. I mean, and a little extra length in the arms can make up for that if you get a little bit in poor position, and he uses those skills well. Good tackling. He's willing to get in there, stick his nose in there, and run defense. He's a little slow to open his hips when he flips his hips in coverage. And especially when you don't have that sixth gear, you can't go catch a guy downfield. Being slow in your turn can hurt you. And that's one of the, I'm going to say, the defensive back red flags that I have for him. That's something they really need to work on. Or he needs to go to a bail system, like the old Seahawks cover 3 where they bail back, or New England used to run a system where their corners always bailed. I'm not the biggest bail guy, but I understand it. And he's somebody who would probably do better in that system than having to man up and flip his hips and run with the receiver.
Yeah, look, I'm high on Brents. You'll see him a little bit later on my side. And the reason he's the next Seahawks cornerback is because this guy is a pretty damn good combination of two Seahawks greats. One of them, of course, being Richard Sherman, and the other one being Brandon Browner. Because this guy is about as physical as you can get at the cornerback position. He uses that length. Doesn't matter that guys can outrun him, because he's not going to let him do that. He's got his arms in there. He's going to be pushing them back, knocking them off their routes. No one's going to be able to stand up enough to get past him. So I love Julius Brents. He is my number one target for the Seahawks in this draft. Do I think the Seahawks are going to get a chance to draft this guy? No, because someone else is going to want to snipe him away from the Seahawks at some point. He's probably going to go in the second round, which may be a little bit high when you consider some of the deficiencies in his game. But those deficiencies are not going to keep this guy from being a pretty damn good NFL cornerback. He knows how to use that length. He knows how to bump guys at the line. He knows how to tackle. He knows how to come up and support the run game. I love this kid.
Yeah, I knew you were much higher on him than me. But yeah, I think he's intriguing. I want to see how he's used when he gets to the NFL, because he's definitely making a team. He will be on a 53-man roster next year. Yes, you have Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Interesting. I have another South Carolina back on my list a little further up.
I know you do. Look, Cam Smith is you talk about the baller tag a lot. I know that you pick out guys every once in a while that you think are just come in and play game. That's who Cam Smith is to me. This guy is just a baller on the field. He loves playing football, throws himself around. He is one of the guys that is in on every single defensive celebration. You go back and look, anytime somebody makes a play, he's right up there congratulating his teammates. Great locker room guy, a lot of fun to watch. I mean, again, not elite in any category. He's just over 6 foot, weighs about 180 pounds. He's pretty average when you just look at the physical stuff for your prototypical NFL corner. Ran in the 4.4s, so he's got pretty decent speed. He does have just a little bit more of speed than you need to play defensive back, which I like, because he can track guys down, and you saw him do it playing in South Carolina. Yeah, he's just a fun guy to watch. That's why I love Cam Smith.
Yeah, I said he's highly athletic corner with fluid hips and quick feet. I mean, those are two great things to have as traits if you're a corner. He has above average cover instincts, but his ball skills are good, but he has a tendency to be overly aggressive in coverage. So he might be in bad position because he's being aggressive. So being able to tone that down to be where you need to be when you need to be would probably be better for him. And some coaches are going to work with him on that. But in my opinion, I mean, he has a good floor. But he doesn't have the highest potential of even draft eligible corners from South Carolina that are in this draft. He's definitely the most polished of these guys, though. Coming in at number 6, I have Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami. And this is where you, Adam, have Julius Brents out of Kansas State. So Tyreek Stevenson, he's somebody who's got a lot of good buzz. I think he's rising in his draft profile over the last month. A good size, 6 foot, 200 pounds, 32 and a half inch arms. He's a real physical player. He's a willing tackler. He'll get his nose in there in the run game. High ceiling, I'm going to say average floor. So a guy that if you can afford to bring this player in and let him sit in a complementary role for the first year or two, be a special teamer, be a rotational corner, he's somebody who can probably start for a team in a year or two if he gets developed right, because I think he has that high ceiling and we can get that potential. Another press man specialist. He's got a powerful punch. He'll reroute receivers, exactly what you want to see in press. He can get caught on double moves because he's a little aggressive in his press technique. So if there's something he needs to work on immediately, it's going to be staying with that receiver and being able to anticipate those double moves and not get caught off guard by them.
Yeah, Tyreek Stevens is another one. I mean, again, I think every single guy that you've got on your list could easily be on mine. They're just not, because we've got so many freaking guys to talk about. But yeah, Tariq Stevens is, again, prototypical size, prototypical speed, great length, really physical at the point of attack. Fun to watch playing the cornerback position. He's going to make a team somewhere. I do think that because of the skills that we see him, he's probably going to get thrust into a starting role a little early, something that you already mentioned needs to be a caution. But I think this is a guy who you're going to see probably go pretty early on day 2. And he might, hopefully he gets into the right scheme and a system where they're going to coach him up and work on those things he's kind of lacking in. But I do think that there's a chance that we're going to see this guy get thrust in a little bit early and have some of those welcome to the NFL rookie moments. But yeah, another guy that I really love. Going over to my guy, Julius Brents. Look, I can't say enough about this guy. He's still my favorite cornerback. The only reason he didn't break my top 5 is because he is not as polished as the guys that are in my top 5. These guys possess everything you could possibly want. And it's not that Julius Brents doesn't possess all the stuff you want in your cornerback, but he's got some knocks in his game. The guys in my top 5, very few knocks in their game.
Well, let's go see who the top 5 are. Coming in at number 5, I have Darius Rush out of South Carolina, and you have Keely Ringo out of Georgia. So Darius Rush is slowly becoming one of my favorite corners in this draft class. He honestly started probably around 15th on my rankings. And then I watched some more tape and he moved up to like 12. And then he moved up a little more and he's cracked my top 5. He's a former wide receiver. I love wide receiver converts as defensive backs. He has plus ball skills. When he goes up, he has just as good a chance to get that ball than the receiver. He only converted in 2019, so he's only got a couple years under his belt playing the position. He's tall. He's 6'2", got 33 3/8 inch arms, so real long corner, and he excels in zone coverage. He is probably as much an old school Seahawks cover 3 corner as you can get because he's got more athleticism than Julius Brents. But those two guys would be the prototypical Seahawks corners. Listen, he's marginal in man coverage. It's something he needs to improve on. His tackling consistency, he also needs to improve on. He's a raw prospect, really raw, but he has a very high ceiling, and he would be an immediate impact in a cover 3 zone system in the NFL.
Yeah, look, I'm right there with you. The only reason that I don't have him on my list is because he's going to fall for me outside that top 5, but somewhere above some of these middle round guys. I think this is a guy that's going to go on day 2 at some point, probably in the second round, because someone's going to see those things and say, hey, we can work with what he's got and make him elite. Could that be the Seahawks? Yeah, if it's going to be anybody, it could easily be the Seahawks, because they're the type of team that want to that see all these raw tools and say, hey, we can build on this. Elite ball skills. There are very few guys that are going to get a catch on this guy because he knows how to track a ball and get to it with his hands. The one thing I guess I don't know if I want to say it, a knock on this guy, but the one thing I will ding him for is, yeah, he's just not as polished. You've already said he hasn't spent a lot of time at the position, so he's still growing. Really high ceiling, but I think that the guys that I've got on this list above him or in this top 5 have just as high of a ceiling with him, but also have a much higher floor.
And that's fair. I think a high floor is what your guy has at number 5, Kelee Ringo out of Georgia.
Yeah, look, Kelee Ringo is you've talked about fast risers on your side. Kelee Ringo is one of those guys that I wasn't looking at early in my scouting, I guess, which I really don't call myself a scout because that's not what I do. But he has slowly made his way obviously into my top 5, and is probably going to be shooting up boards everywhere. He's been mocked to the Seahawks in a couple of drafts because, again, this is a guy that his arms are a little shorter than you want, but this is a big physical corner. This guy's over 200 pounds, 6'2", over 200 pounds. He is built like a brick. This guy can put the hurt on, and he is lightning fast. 4.36 in the 40. 200-pound guys shouldn't be running that fast. So yeah, I love this guy. Every time I watch another highlight on him, I'm like, yeah, this guy's a manimal. Yeah, he's a bruiser, and he is gonna be beating up on some really, really good NFL wide receivers in about 6 months.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that he was a riser for you. He's actually a big faller for me. He was probably the number 1 preseason corner on everybody's board before the 2022 season, and now you'd be lucky to see him in the top 10 on a lot of draft boards. And he's a very good athlete. Very good. He has a track background, and that shows because one of the things he struggles with is he has straight line athleticism. Yeah. He struggles to change direction with the same explosiveness that you'd want in an athlete like that. He does have natural coverage instincts when he's with a receiver. I mean, he looks the part really, really good when he's in that coverage, but he's stiff. And because of that, he is not on my list as a cornerback, but you're going to see him on my top 5 safety list.
Okay.
Because I think he's a safety conversion because he doesn't have to flip his hips. He doesn't have to use a lot of that short area quickness. He can use his instincts and his high football IQ to recognize and diagnose what's going on in front of him and shoot in to break up coverage as a safety. I think that's his best NFL position.
Yeah, I'm can't argue with you. Obviously, I mean, everything you said is absolutely true. I just think that go and watch the tape. I mean, there are very few guys that can get past Kelee Ringo as a receiver, and yeah, I mean, he may end up being a safety conversion, but he's going to be a starting cornerback first in this league, and he's going to make some receivers look pretty foolish.
Yeah. All right. So interesting. So Adam and I both put our list together separate. We didn't talk about it other than just prospect talk that we had done prior to putting the list together. And it's interesting. I'm going to have to reveal our number 3 and number 4 slot at the same time because we once again have the same players just in a different order. So my number 3 is Deonte Banks from Maryland, with my number 4 being Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. And Adam has them flipped. He has Joey Porter Jr. higher, and then Deonte Banks at number 4. So this is how we're going to do this. I have Banks higher. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Banks first, and then then you can respond to that, and then we'll kick it to you to talk about Joey Porter Jr. first, and then I'll respond after that. So Deonte Banks out of Maryland, prototypical corner, right? He has the elite size speed combo that you're looking for. 6 foot, 200 pounds, 4.35 in the 40, 42-inch vert, 136-inch broad jump. I mean, this man is a physical freak, and he's a big guy doing it. Good physicality and press man. He has really good reaction ability, fluid hips. You rarely find him out of position, which means every single pass that goes his direction is a contested catch for that wide receiver. He's a good tackler. He reads blocks well in run defense, and he'll stick his nose in there and get down to business. I like his physicality. I think he's somebody, if the Seahawks want to go corner at 20, I think he's somebody who may be available for them.
Yeah, I mean, I like Deonte Banks. I don't have any issues with them all. The only reason I put Joey Porter higher than him is because I think Joey Porter at least is a little bit better at causing turnovers. That's a big knock on Deonte Banks. He's not a ball hawk, and if there's any guy in this draft you can look at and go kind of has bricks for hands, it's Deonte Banks. He's not a clean catcher of the ball. He can break it up. Like don't get me wrong. Just because he's not catching the ball doesn't mean the receiver's catching it. But this guy's not going to generate a lot of turnovers. And it's not that Joey Porter had a ton of turnovers in college either. But you watch him and he had his chance a lot to get these. He just, look, things happen on the field. The ball moves a certain way. He doesn't end up getting it. But Joey Porter tracks the ball probably better than almost any other defensive back in this draft. He knows where that ball is going to be when he gets up to that receiver. And yeah, I think even though he wasn't much of a ball hawk in college, you're going to see him kind of break out in the NFL, I think.
Yeah, I like Joey Porter Jr. Listen, above average size. He's 6'2", just shy of 200 pounds, 34-inch arms, great disruption radius, just like we talked about with Julius Brents and with Darius Rush. He can play in all major defensive schemes. And he's comfortable in press man. He's comfortable in zone. I mean, okay. My 1 through 4 on my list are separated by fractions of a point. I mean, I love all 4 of these guys. He very well could have been number 1 on my list. He has natural body control. He has great ball skills. He forces turnovers. My one thing that kept him at 4 for me, instead of moving him up this list, is he's a little bit over aggressive at time. That can leave him out of position. It leads to penalties. I'd like to see play discipline cleaned up a little bit. So these little things he needs to tweak, but they're not going to hurt his draft stock whatsoever. I really think he's going to be a good pro. I think all 4 of these guys will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good luck to the Steelers. I don't think Joey Porter is going to be there at 17. You guys are going to have to trade up.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm someone who likes a good story, and the best story of the draft would be Joey Porter Jr. going to the Steelers. Let's make it happen, NFL.
At number 5, trade up with the Seahawks.
There, give us a boatload of draft capital to do it. I'm talking multiple first-round picks.
Yeah, do it. Right. Hey, look. Please Steel City.
All right, so I'm actually going to do the same thing because once again, we have the same players at 1 and 2, and we went ahead and flipped them. So same thing. You're going to talk about your number 1 guy. I'm going to talk about my number 1 guy, and we'll both have a chance to respond.
Sounds great.
All right, so my number 1 corner in this class is Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. And number 2, I have Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. And of course, Adam, like I just said, you have Christian Gonzalez number 1, and I have Devin Witherspoon, and you have Devin Witherspoon number 2. Devin Witherspoon, for me, he's not that generational franchise-changing corner. I don't think any of these guys are. But he is an elite prospect. If the Seahawks took him at 5, a couple players would have to be off the board for me to be okay with it, but I'd be okay with it. You line him up across from Tariq Woolen for the next 5 years. Oh, that gives us money to spend elsewhere. It's not a bad move. People are hating on it out in Seahawks Twitter, out with some other Seahawks podcast hosts and analysts. This guy is the best man coverage corner in the class. Period. Good read and reactability, whether he's reacting to the wide receiver or he's playing with his eyes on the quarterback. There's not a drop off in his read and react ability. He has very good ball skill. He high points the ball like if he was the wide receiver running that route. He's 5'11", 180 pounds, but he has the skills. He can match up with a much bigger NFL size X outside receiver. he would be perfect in a man-heavy scheme. That's what he's played in. So if I were to say that there's a question mark somewhere, it would be, does he have the versatility to play in a zone system coming out of that man-heavy scheme? But from what I've seen, he has natural abilities, and I have him as my number one for that reason.
Yeah. Let me talk about Christian Gonzalez. I'll respond in just a sec. The reason Christian Gonzalez jumps Devin Witherspoon for me is because Christian Gonzalez is a physical freaking freak. And I don't think we've seen his ceiling. You want to talk about a guy that could end up being a generational talent at the cornerback position? Christian Gonzalez has every tool you would need to reach that peak. I mean, this is a big guy, 6'1", not super tall, but this is a big guy, 6'1", 197 pounds. He's almost 200 pounds at 6'1". That's a big dude. 32-inch arm, so he reaches there. This guy ran a 4.38 in the 40-yard dash. He is a long striding gazelle. He can keep up with any single receiver in this league, and he's got the size to body guys that are even bigger than he is. Also an explosive athlete. I mean, 41.5-inch vertical. I think he had over 134-inch broad jump or something like that. This is an explosive athlete. Yes, Devin Witherspoon is easily the most polished cornerback, the most well-rounded cornerback in this draft. That's not up for debate. Devin Witherspoon is great at everything, and he knows how to do his job, except for maybe being in zone, just because we haven't seen it. But Gonzalez, there's no questions about Gonzalez fitting into a zone coverage scheme with that length and that speed. He can absolutely do it. If we want to line up someone right next to Tariq Woolen that's going to be able to keep pace with Tariq Woolen on the field, then Devin Witherspoon's your guy. If we want a guy that's going to complement, Christian Gonzalez is your guy. If we want someone that's going to complement what maybe Tariq Woolen doesn't bring to the field, then yeah, go with Devin Witherspoon. But yeah, the only reason they're flipped for me is because the ceiling is just that much higher with Christian Gonzalez.
Nice. Yeah, I have a lot to say about Christian Gonzalez, actually. So he's a long athletic corner, 32-inch arms, above average, so very good instincts, I think, when he's in coverage. You mentioned his 40 time. He also had a 41.5-inch vertical and 133-inch broad jump. I mean, elite athleticism. He's a prototypical corner. He passes the eye test on film. He passes the eye test in person. He's got good coverability, good play recognition, and good ball skills. All things you want in a corner. Check, check, check. He's a very, very good tackler. I'd say almost elite tackler at the position. He only had a 6% missed tackle rate in 2022. And for a defensive back, who most people, your safeties are normally the better tacklers, and your corners, maybe they're a little bit of a diva, maybe they don't want to get their hands dirty. That's not the problem here. He's willing to stick his nose in, and he's very good and has good tackling technique. I'd like him to be a little more aggressive. A lot of times, and this is why I have him number 2. Well, this is part of why I have him number 2. I'd like him to be a little more aggressive because at times he lets the receiver dictate contact. So it may have been the way it was coached, but when a lot of times he goes up for the ball, he won't go up to try to get the ball at the highest point. He'll let the receiver do that, and then he'll make sure that he tackles him once he catches it, instead of possibly going up and breaking up the pass. So I'd like to see a little more aggressiveness. He's number 2 on my board because I have questions about how he played against big-time opponents. He had a 52 grade against Georgia, and he had higher grades against lesser opponents. So that's more the talent he's going to see in the NFL, and those question marks are why he's my number 2 and not my number 1.
Yeah, like you said before, I mean, we could interchange any of those top 4 guys, and I don't think anyone would really have any questions. These are all elite prospects in the cornerback position. If the Seahawks are going to take a cornerback early in this draft, this would be early in any draft, this would be the draft to do it.
Oh, 100%. I really like what all these top 4 guys bring to the table. Darius Rush, I would be perfectly happy with them getting in the second round. I wouldn't think it'd be a reach at all. So I like this class. I like this defensive backs class across the board, and these corners are no exception.
Yeah, Absolutely.
So this has been our 2023 top 10 cornerback prospects for the NFL draft. Thank you for listening. As always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.